Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Dr. Forrester Dean, and I'm here with
Venzel.
Venzel, who has just started. You just got accepted to your program, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Future physical therapist, Dr. Rucker. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're going to be together, all of you and us, through his journey and support him and cheer him on. Thanks for joining us today. This is part 2 of the gamma gain. So what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of hit through our principles. Now, we created this. These don't already exist.
Mm-hmm.
We have 9 principles that we created, and honestly, we feel pretty at liberty to make stuff up because we're always trying to organize our thoughts, and there really isn't anything out there that's designed for, how we want to explain things, right? So it's not like we made it up because it doesn't exist. Obviously, gamma gain's a real thing. Mm-hmm. The physiology behind it is there. The neurology behind gamma gain is there, but it's not that well known.
And understanding that relationship with and how it plays in the body and with recovery and also with daily activities in your life.
Yeah, in sports, things like that. Yeah. So the point of the gamma gain discussion, I think it's going to end up being 3 parts. Mm-hmm. Is we're trying to help folks, clinicians, understand the value of the gamma gain story in their therapy to accelerate recovery, to help them pick drills and skills that are more highly prized in their ability to get patients better quicker. And of course, all clinicians want to be known for success stories, right? Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about gamma gain a little bit. So gamma gain basically describes the activation of the A gamma motor neuron.
Correct.
Right. And so what happens is it uptakes muscle slack. Mm-hmm. As the muscle contracts, the fibers don't just continue to slide in. Those myofibrils don't continue, the actin myosin, don't continue to endlessly. They have a limit to how much they can contract. And you'll see that in the 3rd part. So when they hit that limit, gamma gain kind of bunches everything back up and allows the muscle to continue to contract through its full range of motion. And that all happens in real time. Mm-hmm. So we could say gamma, or that gamma motor neuron, kind of has 2 jobs. Remember, we didn't make this up. We're organizing our thoughts this way, that there's a positive and negative gamma gain. The positive gamma gain, in both cases, gamma gain's doing its job. Mm-hmm. Positive gamma gain, we're going to call it positive gamma gain, means that the element of the motor neuron is continuing to uptake slack, and we call that muscle contraction, right? Performance as expected. Sometimes we call that observable work.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
You kind of made that up.
Yeah.
It was important because when he said observable work and unobservable work, we were able to understand the difference between mobility and stability.
Yes.
Right? So even in stability, there's still work being done. We just can't see it.
Exactly.
There's no joint angle change happening, right? And then we're going to say negative gamma gain is sustained contraction, or what we might call joint stability, or even muscle stability. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more when we talk about sports force reaction in part 4.
Gotcha.
Today, the 4th principle, I should say. So, and then that's unobservable work, stability, right? So we're talking about gamma gain's application in work that you can see and work that you can't see. Now, I would say physical type therapies tend to focus on the observable work because it's objective. They can take a SOAP note about it. It's pretty hard to take a SOAP note about stability, right? But we're going to say, if you're developing gamma gain using the 9 principles, or at least the first 6 principles, I would say stability is kind of guaranteed in your therapy, right? Okay, so I'm going to take principle number 1, and we're going to talk about motor units recruited.
Gotcha.
So we're talking about nerve diameter. So the larger the nerve diameter, the more muscle it's responsible for, right? And then so we're also looking for potentially for the biggest benefit is to have all of the largest nerves to be recruited in our drill or in our skill, right? And then we want to make sure that that drill or skill is anaerobic in nature, and we're going to explain all this in probably part 3 or a little bit later, even in today, right now. So we're talking about, one, not 0, but like 1, in most people, I'm just going to say 10, 12, 15 seconds, but in most folks, not more.
Yeah.
More than that, maybe even like 6 seconds, right? In untrained people. So now remember, the whole story today is framed around improving the physical type therapy, right? So all of these elements, these principles contribute specifically to that. We're not just this isn't an anatomy class.
Exactly.
Okay? So principle number 1, motor units recruited.
And then principle number 2 principle number 2 is MET. And what that stands for is minimal essential threshold. And
we kind of made that up too.
Yeah, we did. And what consists of the minimal essential threshold is significant action. So specifically, with say we're doing some therapy on the knee, we don't want it to do it sitting. And one of my favorite things to say is, if the patient comes in walking, the therapy should be done standing, and you want to engage the system. So it's systems based. So that's what significant action is. Complete action is engaging the system, which is the myofascial slings.
Oh, I get it. So the myofascial slings, let's say it's just a knee complaint. So you're saying you're going to include the knee through the sling?
Yes, from the ankle mortise to the hip.
Right.
So the
contralateral side.
Yes, exactly.
I get it. So it isn't just treating the knee. You're treating the knee through the complete action of the whole sling.
Exactly.
And then if you put all the slings together, then you're getting that significant action of the whole body. So you're saying even if it's just a knee complaint, we're talking about training
the whole system,
the whole body.
Because you have to, and especially because movement and what we do is not isolated in real life.
True.
It's systems based. And then thirdly, it needs to require maximal effort. And in maximal effort, we're taking it to failure, which is like mentally, we want them to be exhausted where they're just mentally drained from obviously the drill that we're getting them to take to their maximal effort, and fatigue. So that's more muscular. So that's getting them actually tired from that as well as, so it's mental and physical, failure and fatigue.
And then so just quickly, we can tie what Venzel just spoke about back already to the largest nerves.
Exactly.
And anaerobic, right? So already we're starting to build this picture of what their physical type therapy drills in order to recruit gamma gain or to get it involved in the therapy. That's just the beginning essence. That was great. Okay, third principle is action response. So what we're talking about here is the drill itself should be novel to the patient. It should not be something that they do every day that they already know. It should have an unexpected element to it. So even like I'm going to say like classically, hey, I want you to do 15, 20 knee extensions. I'll be back in 3 minutes. So, but what that does is like the brain is already turned off because it's already known.
Autopilot,
Autopilot, right. So what we're talking about is each repetition being different in the set. So if you can do a set of 10, 15, 20, the therapist is actually going to use the second part of this, which is cueing.
Yes.
Right. So you can use color cues, you can use tactile cues, verbal cues. Right. So even if Venzel's just going to do like a knee extension, I'm going to have him close his eyes and I'm going to say wherever I touch, wherever you feel touch, I want you to do a knee extension. So I can touch him here. If I touch him here, if I touch him here, touch him here, he's responding. You can open your eyes. He's responding to listening to his whole body. So you're getting this heightened proprioceptive awareness and you're responding with a drill other than just do a set of 10.
Exactly, because proprioceptive feedback is key into discussing what gamma gain is about and how it ties in with all of our principles.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And then we want an element of suddenness, right? That quickness, that responsiveness that's really fast, no, without delay. So we're saying that gamma gain is cued more when the drill is quick and sudden, which also brings us back to anaerobic, which also is large nerve fibers. So you're starting to see how it's building the story.
Exactly. And also it helps us build out our own tests as well. So measuring the speed of the recruitment of that drill. So in itself, having them do the drill.
That's subjective.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay, so action, the third principle again, just in completeness, is action response. So we have 4 parts: novelty, variation, responding to a cue, and then of course suddenness.
Correct. And principle number 4 is pretension. And that consists of ground force reaction or sports force reaction, which is closed chained, and pretoned, which is open chained. And then thirdly, it satisfies principles 1 and 2, which is the motor units recruited and the minimal essential threshold.
Right. So what we mean by ground force reaction is that the body, and we made that up too.
Yes.
So classically it's
Ground reaction force.
Right. So what we're talking about is it isn't just that the floor is pushing back when we push down. It's that the human is experiencing a proprioceptive whole body experience. And so in ground force reaction, there's a toning, there's a whole body toning or tightening or compression, whatever you want to call that, that activates the core, and all of that retention is necessary to evolve negative gamma gain for like bracing. Can you think of an example like with sports or football or something?
So using football as an example, I'm a wide receiver. So I go out, I make a break, the ball's thrown high.
Right.
Pop, I get up, I leave my feet. So now I'm no longer tied to the ground.
Right.
So I have to create a sense of stability. I have to turn an open chain movement, which is me going out for the ball, into closed chain to maintain stability, because stability is what I have to create to land with that ball and to make sure if I get hit, I don't fumble.
Right. And then you brought this up already, like, so also a sports force reaction might be, like if I
bracing for a hit with the in the example that I used, it was about the diaphragm and how the diaphragm tied into training gamma gain through the diaphragm, which is we're engaging the myofascial slings, we're engaging that significant action, so it's complete, significant, and also a maximal effort, because now it has to happen suddenly, it has to happen quickly, and I have to do it to the utmost of my ability, because I have to be able to absorb a force and transmit that force. Yes, I have to brace and take that force and transmit that force through my sling, so I can be able to soften my landing and be able to not fold from that hit. So if I can keep going, or I can or I'll fall down and not break a bone or cause a strain or a tear. So it's a grace even in being a falling, or a grace in being able to get someone off you after they make contact.
So you could even say that negative gamma gain has, in performance, has sort of a bracing effect, right? So the muscle contracts not to do work, but to become like a pillar, or to become like a plate. That's solid, that's inflexible, unbendable. And then you said another key thing, which is transmission of forces. So the force then is crossing through the diaphragm, which is creating intra-abdominal pressure, but it's also transmitting the force sort of around, either to the spine for stability, or around, and then redirects it into a sling into ground force reaction.
Exactly.
So the idea is that without these components of the suddenness, the larger nerve count, all of these things, complete action, anaerobic, all these things contribute to the activation of gamma gain, which again, if your drill or your therapy skills include these gamma gain type, principled drills, that we're just talking about speeding things up for you.
Yes.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
And then principle number 5 is about joint angle change. And what we mean by that is that the range that the limb or the joint goes through is fully phasic, which means it isn't just, part of a range of motion, which is sort of like that sometimes cautionary thing that happens in physical type therapies, is they say, okay, well, we're going to start here and then we're going to go through more range of motion until they're like to a full range of motion. I'm just saying on day 1, it should be fully phasic to set the baseline, to set the standard for the therapy. So the element or the principle of joint angle change needs to be fully phasic, and it should be phasic for sure through that biomechanical advantage. Angulation, which we've described before, is 120 degrees at the knee of the hip, right? And even at the elbows, and then 30 degrees of scaption. And then I'm working on we talked about this a little bit today. I'm trying to create a language or vocabulary that describes a scaption type element or angulation at the hip.
Correct.
Also, because there's more stability with a wider stance. So we'll get to that, and then I get to create a crazy word that goes with that. Yeah.
And then for number 6, principle 6, it's patient status.
And what does that mean?
Patient status, it means that you need to be able to pay attention to make sure your patient is not guarding or apprehensive to whatever test or drill you're doing, or even just an interaction, just your first interaction. A person, you don't know the person, you want to be able to kind of get you want them to kind of lower their guard, because if they don't, what's going to happen is, and you create an expectation.
You're talking about the patient coming, like their first encounter.
Yes. So
they come to the office and they're like
apprehensive. Yes. And then you want to be able, as a clinician, you should be able to see that, because you don't want you don't want to show the patient that you have certain expectations from them from the go, because they want to feel like they're coming to you as a resource for a reason. You have to build a relationship where you basically make them feel comfortable, and regardless of what the situation is, you're going to get them to their destination. So you don't put expectations upon the patient. You set expectations for yourself as the clinician to make them feel as comfortable, as safe as possible. You want them, like I call it the 3 Ps. You need to be professional, you need to be proactive, and it needs to be productive.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what the patient status should consist of.
Yeah, and in all of that, you're talking about patient safety.
Yes.
Patient respect. Patient values. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So you do such a great job explaining that, but the idea here again with gamma gain, with this patient status, is the patient comes in and they're tight. You're never going to get any active range of motion out of them, right? If they're like, their lifestyle is crazy, they have like that sympathetic amplification in their lifestyle,
and you can't even test. Your tests are going to be biased anyway because of that gamma gain. That's that pre-tonedness that they have because of their apprehensive. You're not going to be able to get full ranges of motion, obviously, when you're so everything
skewed.
Is limited. It's skewed, exactly.
Yeah. So that's great. I love it when you tell that story. So principle number 7 is, and this is big.
Yeah.
And we've said this a couple of times, and it still blows my mind. So restoration of tissue, not restoration of strength, which is common in the physical type therapy settings, not restoration of active or passive range of motion, which is also prevalent in physical type therapy settings. So we're saying not strength and not range of motion.
Yeah.
So we're
Controversial.
We're going to throw that out.
Yeah.
And we're going to say restoration of tissue.
Correct.
Now, because we're focusing on restoration of tissue, not strength and not active range of motion, now we can focus on gamma gain.
Yes.
Okay? So when we're talking about restoration of tissue, we're talking about tissue organization. We're talking about unfaulting motor patterns. Classically, it's what the patient's coming in with if it's not, a trauma or, something like that. It's not incidental. We're talking about preserving or restoring joint stability, not flexibility.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of the opposite. Yep. And then, of course, triplanar movements or complex movement patterns through all the planes of motion. Steering tissue away from scar, which means we're talking about mobility today, kind of regardless of the injury. We're talking about reestablishing mobility now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, the most important of all of that is that gamma gain has to be conditioned. It's not intrinsic to the human body. It's not like my heart is going to beat whether I'm working or I'm sleeping or I'm stressed out or not stressed out. My heart's always going to beat, right? There's no gamma gain unless conditions 1 through 6 that we just discussed are present in the drills. I'm going to say not in one drill, but all of the physical drills. Therapy. Yeah. And so why don't you? So 1 through 6 basically describes the platform for part 3. We're going to talk about which are the ways to impart all of the principles into each drill. So we'll have explanation of that and a nice checklist, and so you can forget about video 1 and you can forget about video 2 if you need to, and just use video 3, which is going to be your checklist toolbox. But now we're going to talk about like the failure of gamma gain subclinically and clinically. So why gamma gain doesn't exist in our therapies or in our strength conditioning or, in coaching, all of that. Right? We talk about it in different ways. We talk about it as agility, stability, balance, things like that. But all of those, strength, all of that basically boils down the common denominator. And we love common denominators. We love 2 things. We love common denominators. And we like being able to explain things in the simplest, most basic way that is true the most often.
Yes.
Right? So clinically, you want to take,
I'll take
subclinically.
Okay, I'll take subclinically. So subclinically, the failure of gamma gain and things that can contribute to it are things like a sedentary lifestyle.
True.
And being lazy. No strength conditioning, not prioritizing, any type of muscle building and power. So that power principle of
so you're not
strength
talking
training.
about being in the back row of like a step class.
No.
Right.
Thirdly, things like wearing high top shoes, flip flops, high heels.
Why?
That affects things. That affects gamma gain. So, for instance, the high top shoe, it limits that ankle mortise and all that proprioceptive feedback it could be that can contribute to you creating stability intrinsically.
Yeah, right.
And also with flip-flops, when you wear a flip-flop, because it's not secured to the foot is always in like a more flexed position. It's very stiff, it's
like
rigid.
A brick.
Yes, because you have to kind of hold the flip-flop onto your foot. So now you're not allowing the foot to really have that recoil, that elasticity to it, that bounce.
You mean you can't run track and do hurdles in flip-flops?
Sure you can. No, of course not. You can't. And then high heels and the relationship we talked about. I don't know if we talked about this yet, but the relationship of the myofascial sling and dealing with tendons like the Achilles tendon, because it's in a position that keeps the Achilles tendon in a shortened state, the way you're transmitting that force is not optimal. So obviously it's like trying to run a race in high heels.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
So in that sense, gamma gain's kind of absent.
Yes.
It isn't just like negative gamma gain because it's creating stability. It's not going through its fully phasic.
Correct.
It's like it's completely toned and, day after day after day after day.
Exactly.
So it becomes a faulty motor pattern.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
also clothing plays a big part. Things like the tight shoes, tight pants, underwear that limit that range of motion. The reason why that's super important is because we were talking about, I was like wearing a suit. So say for instance you're wearing very fitted clothes, and it changes the way you walk, the way you walk, the way you lift things, the way you pick up things. Now you're creating a faulty motor pattern for yourself.
And we used to call that like malposture.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The world calls that, poor posture, bad posture. But we're going to say it's not really bad posture. It's subclinical failure of gamma gain.
Yes.
Because being fully phasic is gone.
Exactly.
Right. And if you're not fully phasic 40 hours a week, that's pretty much going to define your motor capacities, your motor abilities, unless you're specifically doing, some lifting and some drills and skills and some sports to balance all that out.
Correct. And structurally, we're dealing with another issue, which is hyperflexibility. So the reason why that is advantageous to gamma gain is because it doesn't allow us to be in that biomechanical advantage state, which is the 120 degrees at the elbow, 30 degrees of scaption, 120 degrees at the knee. Having that, being in that position, it allows us to produce the most force and work. You can't do that when
And
you're
stability.
not. Yes, and stability.
So we could say hyperflexibility is also sort of permanent instability
Yes.
of joints.
Yeah, you're imbalanced in
And
this
then we
state.
go to yoga class and stretch even more beyond our hyperflexibility to just kind of show off. And so gamma gain, again, is absent and lost maybe forever.
Yeah, and it's not in the flexibility, it's in the mobility where gamma gain lives.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
Anything else?
Yeah, of course. Things that consist of the failure of gamma gain subclinically are screen gazing. So the way you watch TV, you're not in the most like we were just talking about advantage state. You're in.
Yeah, I was just gonna be like, I thought my phone was here. It'd be like
looking down. Yeah. So
all of this now, that's gamma gain unhappy.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And then laying down, that affects gamma gain, and it affects how that relationship, because we're trying to learn this. We're trying to get this to be instilled into your daily movement patterns, all your movement patterns, and then monotonous training. So that's thing like getting on the elliptical. It's not. Especially dealing with our height, every elliptical machine is set at the same parameters. Everyone's not the same. Our stride lengths are different. So if it
height,
doesn't,
weight, everything, right?
It doesn't account
width of
for
our
that.
gait,
100%. And then things like electric bikes.
Oh, brother.
Yeah, that's not going to allow us to maximize gamma gain.
Right.
You gotta put in the work, and the seating as well. So having.
Oh yeah, know they sit on the, not even just electric bikes, but I've noticed like this trend. So we're in, we're at the beach in LA. So everybody's got a beach cruiser.
Yeah.
And they've got the seat set. I'll try to put some pictures in the next one. They got the seat all the way down, and they're pedaling like this. Like some of them, their knee is above their hip, and this is the only range of motion is like 10, 15 degrees.
Yeah.
You know what I want?
Translate.
I just want to like reset you know what I would do is take the seat off And then they'd have to,
they have to be in
stand
that.
up pedal. They have to be up higher.
Yeah.
So we'll bring that up again.
Yeah.
So then there's so that's subclinical, right? So that's before the patient ever shows up. So these are all the problems in their ADLs and their lifestyle choices that causes, an absence of gamma gain to be conditioned. But then there are also clinically there are failures
Correct.
of gamma gain. So that can be described like canes, crutches, wheelchairs, braces, splints, all that stuff that immobilizes a joint. Now, in some cases, let's say for elbow fracture or whatever, that's going to be necessary. But just wearing a wrist brace all day long because you have carpal tunnel will find me, and I can treat it in one treatment, and then you don't need to wear a brace day and night. So yes, you don't have the symptom of the carpal tunnel, but you're destroying that entire sling's worth of gamma gain.
It's like the high top shoe.
Yeah, you're untrained. Yeah, so the high top shoe is untraining everything through the whole horseshoe.
Yep.
Both sides. I mean, who'd wear a high top on one side? I don't know. Maybe it's going to be a trend. But then, also this apprehensive approach to physical type therapies where they're saying, okay, now I'm going to be really careful. I want you to move really slowly, right? So that's a problem because that approach, that slow approach or that apprehensive approach is going to delay or even prevent the patient from getting better. And I did say prevent.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if the therapist's understanding of gamma gain doesn't exist, right? They don't understand the principles. They don't understand the application of the principles. They don't, right? Then they just need a teaching moment. And that's what we're here for right now is, but I would say, like, to me, the most tragic clinical issue is bed rest.
Yeah.
Because bed rest just wrecks.
It destroys that relationship.
The whole system-based.
Yeah.
And it kind of, there's a time and a place for it, but I'm going to say don't generously apply that, right? So, the classical thing is, doctor, hey, my wrist hurts when I play tennis. Say, well, don't play tennis. Well, that's the same as bed rest. So what I mean by bed rest is, sort of the metaphor of bed rest is that if you have pain or if something's bothering you, you should stop doing it. We're saying, no, don't hit your gamma gain and get your game on. Get your gamma gain game
There you
on.
go, brainstorming right now.
Oh my gosh, it's happening right here in front of us. Okay, so thanks for joining us, Dr. Forrester, Dean
Venzel.
And we will see you soon for part 3. Thanks so much.